Okay.
Oh Lord. Hey,
Uh,
hey,
uh,
hey, there we are.
the Zoom recording voice.
Oh, I need to record the audio too for
Yeah, we need to.
yeah.
Yeah, tell me when to start.
All right. Recording in three, two, one, record.
Boom. Testing, testing. I am looking
Testing.
good on all frequencies.
Mic check. Testing, testing. I'm really good. My heater just kicked on. Great. Good for audio. Um,
Perfect.
so did you guys figure out what you want to be dressed as for Halloween?
I don't know that I would say I've got my own costume figured out. I mean, Halloween is happening on a Monday this year, and my son's 11 months old, so it's not exactly like I'm planning on hitting some hot Halloween parties over the weekend. But what we have had a blast picking out is it is his first Halloween, obviously. So
That's right. His birthday is in
we've
November, right? So
so
this'll
we enjoyed finding his first costume. He is going to be a hedgehog.
I love
Um,
it. I
yeah,
love it.
so that's a great one. How about you all?
Um, just like your family, our costumes are centered around our children. um, yeah, my oldest daughter is going to be an owl. I'm a super big fan of the kids' costumes for toddlers that are like a cute little like head, and then that just kind of builds out in this like giant little belly, and they kind of wander around. So like she was an Ewok last year, and it was fucking adorable. Um, and then so she's going to be an owl, and we talked about maybe like making our younger our who's an infant like another bird, and then like I might be a tree or something, but I said no, let's make Helena be that's our 2-year-old a Hedwig, and then I'll be Harry Potter. Sarah can be Hermione, and we're making our youngest daughter. We're putting a little like ginger cap on it, and she's going to be Ron Weasley.
I thought you were gonna say Dobby.
That would be good
Probably,
too.
yeah.
I don't know. I think it'll be
That's
fine. This is like the third time I've been Harry Potter. I already got the tie. I got the wand. I have a scarf. It's easy to do.
can do a scar. It's too
Yeah.
easy. Yeah,
I just had to buy
absolutely.
some glasses. Some
There you go.
yeah. Anyway.
You're all set. Well, I hope everybody else is picking out their Halloween costumes and getting prepped because it is the season. Should we jump in?
Oh boy, here we go. Let's do it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to This American Horror Story, an unofficial podcast about the FX hit show, and should we be saying Hulu hit show now, Kris? American Horror Story. I am your host, Tyler Moss, here with my co-host.
Kris Husted. What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Season 11, NYC. Here we are. Ooh.
Well, welcome back. Season 11, that's right, NYC, AHS, NYC. We just watched both episodes 1 and 2 of the new season of American Horror Story. It seems as if they will be releasing back-to-back episodes in a 5-week sprint. So it is my time, 12:45 a.m. on was Wednesday night, is now Thursday. Um, and this is just how we're going to do it, folks. We are going to be releasing the episode in 2 separate episodes, so that way, if people are listening later on in the future on demand, they can split it up and they won't have to listen to spoilers, or they won't have to like pause halfway through the podcast, go watch episode 2 and come back. So
Right.
we're trying to a little think through a little user experience here, but we'll be dropping both both episodes in the feed at like probably the same time. At least we're going to try to do that most weeks, I think. It seems like the creators of American Horror Story clearly weren't thinking about how they could best facilitate this American Horror Story podcast. That's what I could say about this season, Kris.
That's true. Why weren't they thinking about us? You and I have talked about this a bit. Um, if you're seeing this podcast in your feed and you're surprised that the season has started, you're not alone. A lot of people were very surprised that this season just kind of dropped out of nowhere. We didn't know the release date or the launch date until only like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I feel like. Um, and from what it seemed social media wise, the buzz, a lot of people are in the same boat as us and didn't know it was happening so quickly, or some people didn't even know it's happening right now. Surprise,
They should call it
as
American
Madison
Horror
would say.
Story Secret.
Yeah.
It's American Horror Story Secret, and also it's a season about secrets, so it's secrets. you know. Well, we are thrilled to have you all here with us for another season of American Horror Story, even if we're going to kind of push through it pretty quickly over the next month and change. There's a lot to talk about. We're going to go through and dive into the episodes pretty quickly. Um, for those of us who are new to American Horror Story, thanks so much for joining us. For those who've been longtime listeners, welcome back.
Best fans out
We
there.
are, yeah, we're a bit of a community out here. We are just having conversations about the episodes as fans of the show. We always invite comments, theories, all those good things on our Facebook page at facebook.com/This American Horror Story, where you can also message us or via email at thisamericanhorrorstory@gmail.com. Also, we encourage you to rate us and review us on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. And Kris and I are trying something new this season. We'll see how it goes. Kris, do you want to fill everybody in?
We're recording video on this one. Also, I just realized I'm not sure if I set the settings correct, so we would both show up. I hope the recording isn't the type of recording where one voice, like it's someone's face, and then when the other person speaks, it's just their face. I hope it's both of us in your squares at the same time.
Oh, I hope it's you the whole time. That's what I
No, God, no.
So if you want a real horror story, you can stream our
Oh,
video on YouTube. So that's an exciting new development, and we'll see how it goes. Let us know what you think. And if we don't hear anything, we don't see any views, then we'll
we
realize
tried.
it's not worth the effort. But hey, we've tried new things around here. Appreciate, yeah, y'all reaching out. And then finally, before we dive into episode 1, which is called Something's Coming, um, I wanted to say you can also support us. We just do this podcast for fun, and we pay our server fees out of pocket, which can be pretty spendy for month to month sometimes. So if you're interested in throwing a couple bucks our way, you can donate to our podcast at buymeacoffee.com/TAHS. That's all caps TAHS. And we sincerely appreciate whatever you can give. It means a lot. And if you can't, or, that's not a big deal at all. We're just pleased to have you here. I do want to thank Mark and Michelle, who both sent us some background material on this season over email
Oh,
before this started. So that was
ooh.
great. A lot of stuff around Son of Sam, the season of Sam, Sons of Sam, which is apparently a cult. I don't know. We have a character named Sam. I don't know how much we actually have the real Son of Sam, or if they're going to show up or not. But there's some exciting stuff to talk about. Shall we begin with episode 1, Something's Coming?
Yeah, let's do it.
Before we dive in, Kris, what are you drinking this evening?
I went with our old classic standby. I have a nice local cider heated up with some Four Roses bourbon dipped in there. Probably like 2 shots of it. What do you got?
You can't start a American Horror Story season without a cider, but mine is always on ice. So
They're both good. I mean, it's chilly here. I'm sure it's chilly there, but cider and bourbon, you can't go wrong.
cheers to that, my friend.
Cheers.
So that being said, will you talk us through the cold open?
Oh,
Sunsetting opening
yeah.
NYC 1981. Please.
Surprise, there is no cold open. The entire thing goes without a break for I think it was like 15 minutes was the
Yeah.
open. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing.
I
And
know.
yeah, I know
That's what
you
I was
don't
going
want
to
me
ask.
to.
Should we even treat it as a cold open? It was.
I mean, the whole
It
episode
was. It was a cold episode.
Yeah, yeah. But the opening sequence, I can go through that really quickly, which traditionally probably would have been the cold open in any other episode. So we're in New York City. There's a cab, the yellow cab, very iconic. We have the captain and a few flight attendants arriving at a hotel. Captain probably from a I don't even know what was around in the 80s, but commercial. I know I was gonna say Pan Am, but Pan Am was like way before that.
Yeah, it might have been an episode before
That's
that.
like 60s. Anyway, they arrive at the hotel for the night before they probably have
WestJet. I don't know. Something like that.
Anyway, they're doing what they do. They go to the hotel, they get some drinks, and then the captain runs into one of the flight attendants in the hallway. And he says he's not gonna go party, but she's like, "You can come party with me." He says he's married and shows him his ring, and she's like, "Funny thing about these is they come off," which is pretty funny. And he says his does not come off. Also, we get a title card in the middle of this at some point that says New York City, 1981. And he goes back to his room. She feels, she goes back to her room a little annoyed. And he opens up his suitcase and he just starts pulling out some leather. He straps on some leather and heads to this warehouse where it's like, it seems like this kind of like leather BDSM hangout warehouse with other men who are like hooking up. And then he kind of wanders around looking for a certain location, perhaps, and we see him kind of find this corner area, and looming behind him is this kind of tall, intimidating figure in a leather mask on. And then we cut to the next morning. Well, he also like unzips his pants. But then we cut to the next morning, and the police are showing up to investigate a body that was found, and they find what seems to be this man's body, headless. The corpse, who presumed to be the captain, is headless. No ID, but they find this brownstone matchbook. I think it was a matchbook, which one of the guys calls the fruit stand, which is the first of many derogatory terms that we're going to get in this 1980s version of the gay community in New York City.
Yeah, they also make a distasteful joke about head.
It it was
Which
distasteful, but it's morbid humor kind of also. Even it's distasteful because he's gay, but it's also like a very morbid like cop like
it reminded me
you
of
know.
something like maybe Ice T would say whatever that TV show he's on or something like
Yeah.
that.
That's kind of generally the big sequence that we get in the opening, though. The first murder.
Totally. And we get introduced to Detective Patrick. I don't know that we know his
Yep.
last name. We'll call him Detective Patrick for now.
Reed,
Played
I
by
believe.
Detective Patrick Reed. Okay, and it's played by British actor Russell Tovey, who is someone who we're really excited
Yeah.
to have join the season. And clearly, we have a couple newcomers taking pretty lead roles this season. So actually, a few. So I'm excited to talk about that with you at the end of this episode. But that kind of opening scene is blended with some business that's happening in a laboratory. We see Billy Lord as, I think her character's name is Hannah. That
Hmm.
was the first name, at least in kind of the character promos. I don't remember what the last name is. I might have it somewhere deeper in here, but she's a doctor, a research
Well,
doctor,
I think it's
but
Wells.
also has a clinic. Okay, Hannah Wells. Because I tried to look and see if there was somebody associated with that name who like
Mm.
was discovering things about HIV, but for like my rudimentary searches before we started here at 12:45, I didn't find anything.
Yeah.
Um, but Dr. Hannah Reed, or no, Wells, is looking at a virus which I believe, we're presuming to be the HIV epidemic starting to kind of take hold on an island. And do we know what the island is?
Fire Island.
It is Fire Island. I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
that I
Yeah. Yeah.
knew for sure that's where it started. Okay.
Yeah.
So on Fire Island, where she finds samples of this disease in the bodies of deer.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to ask you a question before we dive into the rest of the episode.
Hmm.
This kind of side, I don't know what we call it, like parallel story is kind of interesting because there's a small part I think it might be episode 2 that we'll get to where it kind of connects with all the other characters. But for the most part, Billy Lord's kind of off doing her own thing right now. How'd you feel about that?
Yeah. The episode 1, we pretty much meet almost all of our main characters and all of their stories and what's going on. So it feels a little disconnected, but you know that it's eventually they're going to come together and find, the narratives are gonna the threads are gonna wind up and intertwined with each other. I thought it was fine. To be honest, it was kind of like my least favorite part of the whole first episode, just because the tone of the serial killer is more of like a detective noir tone to it, and
Noir, that's the word that came to me too. Absolutely.
yeah, and then the science of what's happening at Fire Island with the deer feels like a very different story. Kind of sometimes like we get in American Horror Story. Here's some politics. Here's a asylum, and then oh yeah, here's aliens too, which doesn't always work together. Obviously, we know what the connotation is here with the parallels of the AIDS HIV epidemic and what's going on Fire Island and how that's sort of going to connect, especially in the 80s to the 90s. But right now, just as watching as an American Horror Story, I don't know, it was all right. I was happy to see Billy Lord for sure. but I don't know. I was like,
Yeah,
all right, whatever. Let's see what happens.
yeah. It does seem kind of like it's off on its own thing. I'm hoping we'll see like continue to tie in more and more. I anticipate we will. It'll be like a Game of Thrones situation where Billy Lord is up at the wall, and eventually she's going to come down and be part of everything else, you know. But we're not there. Well, it's only like a little bit there right now. Um, but moving into, I guess, what we'll call more the meat of the story, we open on Gino's newspaper office. He works at a newspaper called the New York Native, which is a real newspaper, or was a real newspaper. Were you aware of the Native? I wasn't until I
I
looked it up.
I was not. You're giving me new information. Was it a gay publication?
It was the New York Native was a biweekly gay newspaper published by Charles Ortleb
Awesome.
from December 1980. So like it only had been around for a short time because remember we're in December 81, so it'd been like
Hmm.
what 6 months until 1997. It was the only gay paper in New York City during the early parts of the AIDS pandemic and pioneered reporting on AIDS when most others ignored it. The paper subsequently became known for attacking the scientific understanding of HIV as the cause of AIDS and endorsing HIV/AIDS denialism.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting,
Yeah.
obviously, and we have Gino, who's played by I always forget how to which last Joe
Yeah.
Joe Mantello, um, another newcomer to American Horror Story, who is getting a complaint lodged to him by a group of gay women who it seems are displeased that the newspaper is only really covering men, right? We see them show up a couple times, and among those is Sandra Bernard. And so we meet a couple of our characters here pretty quick. It's not quite clear to me how Sandra Bernard fits into this story quite yet because we end up seeing her connect with that Billy Lord storyline a little bit later.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
think it's in episode 2, but sorry, I'm teasing things. This is
I
what's going
know. Yeah.
to
This is
happen
only
when we're
episode
watching
one. What
episodes.
are you doing?
I gotta erase my memory, right?
Yep.
But anyway, Gino gives some more context about the newspaper and the fact that, he's a gay man writing about issues that affect gay men. And specifically, his focus is about how they're being hunted and killed throughout the city. So we're getting that context very early on that he pushes through, obviously, especially after, the sequence of events of what happens to him. We also learn that Gino is in a relationship with Patrick. Um, and we begin to source the tension between them real quickly here because Patrick is a cop, Gino is a journalist, which inherently there, speaking from as you and I being having been on that journalist side, would be a
Hmm.
really tough relationship as, Patrick is unearthing things that Gino, and, they're having these candid conversations about what's going on, and Gino isn't allowed to publish them.
Yep.
Or if he did publish them, it would get Patrick in really big trouble if it was tracked
Right.
back.
Right.
But there's a lot of talk too about how prejudiced and corrupt how prejudiced and corrupt the cops are in New York City. I think we see this played pretty clearly, in the scene, in a number of scenes, but also in the comments they make. And this tension gets extended. I think, we're supposed to feel like it's a pretty burnt in. I don't know that we get a set amount of time that Gino and Patrick have been together, but it senses that it's not been too long because, as we know, Patrick is only now just proceeding with divorce papers with his ex-wife.
Right. 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 Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, initially their relationship seems, there's tension there for sure. I mean, it's American Horror Story. Have we ever seen a good relationship? There's always some drama going on in our main characters. And sure enough, that's happening here. But I do get a good read of love between the two of them. And I mean, I think the biggest part is the two actors are really selling it. It's not too campy even. It just feels like a good FX drama at this point.
Authentic.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
I kind of
it
liked
feels
that,
authentic.
you know. It
Yeah, me too.
a big thing that this first episode has going for it, and the whole season so far, I think, is that the actors, because so many of them are unfamiliar and all the familiar ones are kind of relegated, not relegated, but are in more bit parts or like smaller parts, with the exception of maybe Billy Lord, who's kind of, it's just, it's
And
nice because it's kind of
Zachary Quinto, kind of.
yeah, right. Yeah, and he's still kind of peripheral. Like he doesn't pop until a little
Yeah,
bit later in this episode. But the main people that we're following, like the journalist, the cop, and then our um Charlie Carver
Adam.
character, Adam.
Yeah.
They're kind of fresh new faces, and it's nice because it kind of resets you in the American Horror Story universe with not a familiar face, but like, oh, haircut. Even though we love those people, so it's just interesting, and I'm enjoying that so far in this episode.
It is. It is. And I'll be, well, I'm excited to reflect on this episode with you at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but here, the other thing that Gino says too is that, he didn't want to have to go back into the closet for Patrick. And so that's where we also get this additional tension where, because of his job, Patrick feels like he can't be, even though he's obviously come out enough to leave his wife, he hasn't come out at work among these really prejudiced cops, and that really bothers Gino.
I wonder too, like, I mean, Gino's my favorite character so far, in this whole season. But I feel like I'm curious if that is unfair to ask someone in 1981 in the police department to do that's huge, especially in a frankly notoriously racist police department. That and homophobic, that's just uh, that's a big ask of someone.
It's tough. It's a tough
Yeah.
situation because at the same time, Gino has a point where our
Yes.
community is dying and you're not doing enough about it.
Yeah.
And you could be a real advocate if you showed your true self.
Right.
So yeah,
Very true.
there's not an easy answer to it. Anyway, so we get kind of that lowdown on their relationship, the tension there. And soon after is when we meet Adam, who's just come out of a really tough breakup. It sounds like Adam's played by Charlie Carver.
Young guy, and his roommate who kind of teases him about it is like, he just liked him because of his accent. So he's in his 20s, it seems, and we don't know how serious the relationship was, but he was definitely struck in his heart with this paramour.
Yeah, I think he might have said he's in love. He was in love at some point, so he has stronger feelings. And I mean, he has a conversation later with Theo where it's like clearly he's looking for more authentic connection, right?
Episode 2, back it up.
Ah, sorry. I imagine he might have a conversation with Theo about this.
Yeah. Who's Theo? We don't even know who that is yet.
He's in episode 1. His friend Sully wants him to get out of the house, cheer him up, go out and experience life. But he takes him to Central Park, right, where this is taking place.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming.
Where really they're just kind of cruising for hookups. Adam's not interested in this, but Sully clearly is. Finds a guy. They kind of go into the dark of the park. Everyone else leaves, and Adam's just kind of there in the mist on a bench by himself, which is pretty creepy. When all of a sudden, a kind of like Bane from Batman looking dude, which I mean, the guy that we saw not too clearly in the warehouse,
Yeah.
leather mask and everything, super buff, is like standing in the mist. And I mean, clearly Adam feels threatened and runs for it. He calls for Sully. Sully runs to go find him and disappears. I thought he was just going to get killed right then and there, but Sully disappears.
Yeah,
so
he's MIA.
Mm-hmm. Adam goes to the NYPD, describes the Leatherman, which is we learn is a term that comes from this era, which obviously we all know as American Horror Story fans very well from. I mean, it wasn't
Rubber
Man,
Man.
it was Rubber Man in season 1, but there's clearly some parallels there.
In my notes, I kept calling him Leather Daddy because that's also kind of what my reference point would be.
Big Daddy Leatherman. I mean, there's a couple different names for him here.
It's a very common thing we all know these days, but what back in 1981, it probably wasn't it was just coming into its own.
Mm-hmm. But of course, Adam is interfacing with Patrick and is like openly pissed at Patrick for not caring more about this, at this point knowing that Patrick is also gay. And so there's obviously some irony happening there as Adam kind of yells at Patrick for not doing that for the gay community.
Yeah.
And then, Patrick does, to his credit, try to get some internal investigation going on, and he wants to leak the story to the media, actually, about the recent killings. But our chief of police, played by Cal Penn, Chief Mac Marzara, I believe, basically says he doesn't think it's a pattern and doesn't want him to leak it just yet. What did you think of Cal Penn's performance?
It reminds me of a police chief you would see in a Marvel movie or a Marvel TV
Uh,
show more so. It was funny. It was good to see him. I don't. Yeah, he looks a little different. Looks a little older. I know I mean that in a
looks a
disparaging
little older.
way.
I
It's
thought
just
his
yeah, he's just I don't know. He's grown up and now he can play like a police chief because he's cool. I don't know. I like him. It was fine.
yeah,
What did
yeah.
you
It's
think?
like Harold and Kumar go to the New York City Police Department.
I was
Um,
like thinking the entire time, is he stoned?
yeah. I thought that his New York accent was kind of funny. I don't know that I buy it
Really?
yet. Yeah, we'll see over time if I buy it. I don't know that I buy it yet. But yeah, so but Police Chief Marzara is among the kind of more prejudiced club of cops, at least at this point. Um, so he's now ready to bring out the to start any investigation. Patrick kind of gets blocked in that avenue. Meanwhile, at the Neptune bathhouse, which I just want to say that this bar looks pretty sweet, that it's got like these steam rooms and a pool and somebody singing and like this awesome
So
looking bar.
yeah, I've never been to a bathhouse, but that looked fun. Like you have a
Yeah.
singer and you can hang out in the pools, and then there's a bar, like you said, and then you can go hook up in the back. That sounds like pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I've got some OCD level
Oh yeah, it'd
germ
be
issues with
that's a
bathrooms. So
very good point.
that piece of it, like going the steam rooms, I'm like, I don't know that I would love to go to steam rooms, but the bar itself looked really cool with the pool there and everything like that. So, um,
It's like a mini indoor Vegas situation.
yeah. But we get a little bit of Patty Lupone's who's Kathy, whose
Yeah.
character's name is Kathy. I'm not sure based on
Who's
this if she will just be a kind of a singer. I don't know.
Patty Lupone, who's just been hired to sing a song or two every episode in the background.
I mean, it sounds good.
It did sound, she was singing Fever, which was a great song.
Yeah. And that's when Adam notices behind the bar a photo of the
Leather Daddy.
leather-bound leather man. Um, and basically he's asking who took these photos. And that's when we get directed to Theo Graves, photographer Theo Graves, who's played by Isaac Powell, who people
Mhm.
will remember from Death Valley, last season of American Horror Story.
Yeah.
Um, Overhearing Adam, Gino, who's also at the bathhouse, approaches him to give his phone number in case he ever wants to come tell the story, and have the paper, I guess, help amplify the message. Which,
Hmm.
yeah, so we have to remember that, yeah, Adam has Gina's phone number at this point in time. Adam goes the next day or sometime soon to visit Theo's photo studio in person because Theo, after this point, had wandered off with somebody into a steam room. Um, and this is when Theo's assistant first like prompts Adam to do coke, but I think he says it makes him shit his pants.
Yeah.
Uh, this is the first of much coke that we see throughout these first two episodes.
Very
Just
80s.
piles of it everywhere, especially in the vicinity of Sam, who we'll meet in a few minutes. But Adam goes in to ask Theo questions about the guy in the leather mask. We learn a little bit about Theo's art. Yeah, he says some things like, he likes to expose the perverted and what everybody else sees as beautiful, and allows Adam to ask him some questions as long as he agrees to be photographed while doing it. Makes him take his shirt off, all that kind of stuff.
Very pervy.
So Theo describes this muscle guy as somebody named Big Daddy, who he says he doesn't know the real identity of and hasn't seen in years, but he gives Adam a little bit of a lead there. Soon after, I don't remember if Adam was still there, but I think it's after Adam leaves. Maybe
Adam kind of gets shooed away. He's like, "Hey,
yeah,
put your shirt on." Yeah.
and that's when Theo's boyfriend shows up, who is played by Zachary Quinto. We learn his name is Sam, and we learn, and I was a little confused about this at first, but I think we pretty quickly get the vibe that he basically wants Theo to be shooting
Porn.
like porn, like dirtier stuff. Who he sells to sounds like pretty high dollar clients.
Right. We see it later in I don't know. It's this episode.
Oh, with the stool thing.
Yeah. But yeah, he essentially we get the gist of their relationship, which is they're boyfriends, but Sam is also supporting Theo, and he needs him to shoot more of these porny photo shoots so he can sell those. But Theo has an artist's heart, and he gets pulled away, and he wants to do more of what he was kind of explaining earlier to Adam.
Right. And then, of course, they keep hitting a giant pile of Coke on the table as they're talking through this scene.
What a life.
And this is the first way. I mean, I think Theo talks about a coming darkness, and this is kind of. I mean, we get this message a lot in these first 2 episodes about some kind of coming darkness, something coming.
Yeah.
We revisit Gino and Patrick back at their condo, where Patrick sort of offers a weed peace pipe to Gino, and explains the fact that while he can't, leak the story because the, CalPen won't allow it, he can ask Gino some questions. And he asks him about kind of the handkerchief traditions, right? Like what the different
hanky code.
And this is because we should backtrack and say they find the head. I think we forgot to mention this at the beginning. They find the head of the I guess the airline pilot, who was beheaded, and he had a bandana shoved into his throat, and so that's partly why this is a detail of the investigation. So Gino walks him through what the different code is with all the different bandanas, and we learn that the dark blue one that was shoved down the airline pilot's throat is for anal. Since Patrick can't investigate the case actively, he kind of sends Gino out to investigate by proxy at was it called the Brownstone? That other bar.
Mm-hmm.
So Gino's going to the Brownstone while Patrick goes to meet Barb, who is played by Leslie Grossman, one of our long-standing
who is in her who's in her second marriage with a gay man.
Yes, that's
in
right.
In the American Horror Story universe.
That's well, she's not in a marriage. She's on her way out of a marriage, as he has met her to have her just sign divorce papers. And we get a little glimpse into the relationship. I mean, obviously, we know this was relatively recent. What were you gonna ask?
I'd say, what's your vibe on her character so far in this? I remember she said she's like, I got a job at Bloomingdale's doing shoes.
I mean, clearly she was shook by this news, right? Like she didn't expect it coming. She was like, why can't you just be honest with me before she got married? There's a little back and forth where she eventually tells him, you are unknowable. So, is
that what she said? Unknowable?
That's what I wrote down. Is that not what you heard?
I thought she said you are noble. And I was like, oh, that's a weird thing to say. I
wrote unknowable. Yeah. And I mean, you have some empathy for her. I mean, clearly Patrick is going through a very difficult situation at a very difficult time. I mean, it's coming out, but
yeah. Well, I asked you because it seemed Leslie Grossman kind of playing against character, because she's usually kind of like the either sassy, goofy, ditzy, funny, loud person. She's kind of the, hurt ex-wife at this point.
Yeah, she doesn't really have her sarcasm or her snark that she typically has as a character. So it is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I kind of liked it a little bit as a change of pace.
It didn't bother me.
Because I feel like even in our preview episode, we were talking about how she tends to get typecast. But so that, we get a little background on Patrick. Meanwhile, at the
piano bar.
Yeah. Gino meets up with Henry, who's played by Dennis O'Hare. And actually, so Dennis O'Hare looks more like Dennis O'Hare than I thought he did in the promo shot. I thought he was going to look totally unrecognizable, but he does have that big Matthew Modine hair.
Matthew Modine hair. He did. I mean, as soon as I don't know, that Dennis O'Hare, I know we've talked about it a million times, but that kind of just Southern charm that he has, and his little draw, and when he's having his little cocktail, and I love the dude.
And he always delivers his lines with such a flair. I think he said predators thrive on decadence and excess. Kind of.
And even when he said that, I was like, I don't think that's true, but you said it, so okay.
And he's just describing how it's what a kind of, I guess, difficult time it is to they're talking a lot about what does darkness really mean. He talks about I think there's a nearby bar where there's a young man they keep on call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's dark. Someone should be reporting on that. That's, oof.
Mhm.
But
And then, of course, he mentioned a suspicious character comes to the brownstone and orders men mai tais and then leaves
mhm.
with them, and they never seem to return.
Yep.
And so that's where we get the first mai tai lead. What's interesting too, though, is we get a little bit of like an interstitial cut as they're having a conversation. We get flashbacks to Patrick back at the condo, where he takes down some kind of lockbox. Within it, it has bandanas and leather
And some
and
chains.
some chains. And so we know that Patrick. I mean, and obviously the immediate thought was, well, Patrick was just asking about, the bandanas. And so it's clear to us that like maybe Patrick has been feigning how little he knows about this scene when actually he has more experience than we realize.
Yeah, he's got some secrets.
He got, I mean, that's, he's a noble. That's the theme of like moving into episode 2 is Patrick's got secrets, right?
hmm
At another table in the brownstone, Sam is talking to a prospective actor, trying to get him to take some shocking photos that Theo can take of him. And they, as we said, Sam's going to sell them to high dollar collectors. He says it's going to make your career. So that's where we lead into
There we
kind of
are.
this dirty photo, business that's happening behind the scenes. So Sam's wheeling and dealing inside. Gino leaves, but seems pretty fucked up along the street. His vision starts to blur, and I think we pretty begin to realize he got drugged, maybe roofied or something,
Yep.
at the bar.
Which,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. No, it was kind of like, oh, was it? At this point, you're like, did Henry Dennis O'Hare's character do that, or because he flagged the bartender and the drink showed up the same time that Henry showed up. So it was a big mystery. I was into it. Obviously, I didn't want Gino to get
well, and
hurt.
we had we had a waiter deliver the drinks, right? So it's like,
hmm
when did that happen? I don't know. But something got in his drink. He gets blurred. Somebody starts talking to him, and shoves him in a car. Meanwhile, the actor that Sam was talking to in the bar, I think his name's Freddie. He goes to this address
Yep.
that's jotted down on a napkin, and at the door is Big Daddy. Now, this is the big question as we move into both these episodes. Is like Big Daddy's there, so I wrote down here like, so Theo lied about not seeing Big Daddy, but
Well, is it
well,
Big Daddy?
this is the
Yeah,
question, and
yeah.
this is the question, and I think we can talk about it now. Well, should we talk about it now? Let's just talk about how we felt at this time seeing it. Is that Big Daddy was here, and like somehow Sam is associated with Big Daddy, right?
Yeah.
And like it's unclear whether or not Theo knows about this.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's
But at least so like I thought that Sam had given him the wrong address or something, like they were going to beat the shit out of this guy, but instead it is a photo studio. He is getting his picture taken. It just so happens that Sam, after doing a bunch of coke, is going to flip his stool, lube him up, and make him sit on a stool peg, right? And that's the photos that they're going to be selling.
mhm. Right.
So that's clearly Sam's kink, because then he kind of like tries to use that to vibe with Theo and start and have
He's
sex. And
horny. Yeah.
yeah, Theo's just not into that. Their relationship, as you said before, it seems like potentially very finance based.
Yes. Yeah. Um, yeah, at this point, that's what we can kind of get the vibe off of. There doesn't seem to be a lot of love there, just maybe a lot of lust and
Mm-hmm.
financial support. Little sugar daddy stitch going
Yeah,
on, maybe. And
right.
Theo seems to be very driven by his photography art. Um, and we did, I can't, he does reference also, I wonder if it'll come back. That his grandma liked him the best because he could see things that other people couldn't see. So he does have this kind of like artist mind. And that his grandma maybe was a witch and it got passed down to him. So here we go, supernatural.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, and so there's kind of two quick scenes to end. One happens back at the bathhouse where Theo has, I guess, asked Adam to come meet him there to tell him that he learned Big Daddy is dead.
Right. From
Apparently.
Sam.
From Sam, and this is when we get confused a little bit. So then it's like, well, Sam lying to Theo. I think we just don't have a clear vision at this point in time. But Adam just is still dealing with this stuff. Sully's still missing at this point. Someone, I think, is it Freddie or is it a different person?
I
It
think
was
it's
Freddie who
Freddie.
was there
It's
with
Freddie.
Theo,
Yeah, Freddie
because
comes and
Freddie then
hits
kind of comes
on.
and propositions him, right? And everyone's
Yeah.
like, I'm not interested. So Freddie goes into a steam room with somebody else, and then I think we see Big Daddy appear inside the steam room very briefly, right?
Yes. Yeah. That. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to
Hmm.
tell sometimes what's. It seemed like he was actually physically there.
Yeah. And then back on on Fire
Fire
Island,
Island.
which is where Hannah is. She's directing cops to massacre a herd of baby deer, basically. As Patty Lupone sings in the background, and I just wrote my notes like metaphor exclamation point at this point
Yeah.
in time.
Oh yeah. Let's draw like a real hard line between the gays of New York City, the young gays, and um the fawns. It wasn't even like a bunch of deer, like a family of deer. It was just fawns, like baby deer.
Yeah,
And as someone who gets
yeah,
deer in their
it's pretty
yard
brutal.
all the time, there's never like that many fawns just all together. It's like 2 to 3 fawns tops, and like 2 mama deers walking around maybe. It's yeah. So anyway,
Yeah,
but it's so
and this is where
heartbreaking.
we end, and
Yeah.
that's yeah, and that's episode one. So I mean, looking back on it, how did you feel? I mean, how did episode one of New York City? I mean, to
Yeah.
me, well, let me say something to begin with, which is
Yeah.
I would say for me this felt like maybe one of the most understated episodes of American Horror Story we've ever
Yeah.
had, and I don't mean that in a bad way.
Right.
I just mean it in like, especially for a first episode, sometimes it feels like they kind of come out and like want to punch you with some of the kind of like I'm thinking like a hotel or something like that, or Coven, where it's like they want to punch you with some of like the big kind of flashy glam type stuff. And this episode, I mean, we dove right into the mix. It was an interesting creative choice not to even have the credits
Mm-hmm.
because we just dove
Right.
right into the story. It's gritty. There's that noir aspect. In a lot of ways, to me, it almost didn't feel like American Horror Story, which I don't know. I don't know how I felt about that. I like the kind of story it is. What's your feeling?
So I agree. We've already discussed like the big like through line from or draw connection from what's going on with the deer to HIV, and like everyone had theorized that that's what the topic probably was going to be, and it seems like that sure enough it is that. So that aside, I feel like I wasn't watching American Horror Story, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is, like I said, with all the new or the new actors playing these characters, it felt different, and I was kind of surprised, and I enjoyed that, and not like being like, oh, when's Jessica coming out, or where's Francis at, and where's those like killer lines that they're gonna, classic Ryan Murphy snark and sass that comes through. It was nice in a way and refreshing to kind of experience a story without waiting for those types of things. And even Leslie Grossman, who often delivers those, she was a side character. And Patty Lupone just sang. It wasn't trying to like force a lot of stuff. So I actually did appreciate that. That being said, and this is my question to you to kind of flip it, is if you had watched this episode and not known that it was American Horror Story, but just like a new TV show, would you have treated it differently? Would you have thought like would you have enjoyed it more? Or do you enjoy it more knowing that it's part of American Horror Story? Or do you think do you think if it stood alone, you would think less of it? If that makes sense.
I feel like I would watch it if I had stumbled across it in a different context. I mean, it is
If
obviously it's
yeah,
tough to remove. I think for me, it's like partly. I admit that part of why I'm appreciating it is because hey, we're in season 11. You have to come up with new approaches and new concepts, and it
right.
does feel like something a little bit fresh, which I appreciate. But
Last time
also,
they did this was Roanoke, I feel like. Roanoke was like a very like different format where they did this and that. This is a little different than that, but sorry, continue.
yeah, and I mean, I get what you mean though. Is it's like kind of like testing out a new kind of approach, a new concept, and I don't know. I felt like it worked, and I'm like curious to follow the story and see how things come together. And like I'm learning more about this time period, about things I didn't really know, about what gay culture was like in the early '80s and stuff like that, which is a real inflection point for a lot of different things. But meanwhile, we have kind of this still kind of dark, if not American Horror Story with all caps, like American Horror Story with horror story in lowercase story happening, where we have, these murders, these like brutal and grisly murders happening. We have this disease that's preparing to proliferate. And it's kind of interesting too, even though the, HIV story is like a little bit separated from everything else. Like, if you're watching this and didn't know what HIV was, like, it feels ominous, right? It feels like a pandemic, some kind of pandemic.
Something's happening.
You can feel that in the
Yeah,
air. Yeah,
that's true.
and I
That's
kind of
true.
like how they're teeing that up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I
Also,
really enjoyed it. Yeah.
was like,
I'll just go ahead and give my whole review. Is that I really enjoyed it, actually. I thought it was a different pace, a different kind. Like, it felt more story driven than I feel like we've
Yeah.
been in quite some time, and I really appreciated that. And I think the acting super helped with that. I thought all of our if we consider Adam, Gino, and Patrick to be kind of our lead characters, really at this point in time, probably if we're tracking screen time, they would have the most time. I thought all three did a terrific job.
yeah.
So did I give it a rating?
Yeah,
I would give it
Mai
4.25.
Mai Tais.
4.25 Mai Tais.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
I might have to drink Mai Tais from one of these.
I know. I was just thinking that too, and I love a Mai Tai. Mai Tais are delicious. I would never get a drink at a bar, or get one where the person disappeared.
Normally it comes from a slushy machine. That's why you need to get
or like when I lived in California and we would fly to Hawaii, which is not that often, but they would be like, here's your Mai Tai. Like when you get off the plane, it's like, this is dope. I love this. Mai Tais are good.
I'm going somewhere where they hand me drinks up.
Yeah. I actually really did enjoy this. I like we talked about this, like the detective noir focus. Like, I love that vibe. When TV shows go into that, it's awesome. One thing we haven't really talked about too much, I think the music has been fantastic in this, and I think next episode's even better. The imagery is cool, it's fun, it's different. It feels like a different type of a show, but in a good way, in the sense that I'm super on board with it. And even if this was not American Horror Story, I would want to watch the next episode. In the back of my mind, I am thinking like, oh my God, if this was on HBO, it would be so much better. It would be so good. But it's not. We're on FX, and this is not bad. I would give this 4 Mai Tais.
It does, to that sense, it does have some kind of True Detective vibes, now that you say that.
Well, next episode, I feel like our director's camera feels inspired by that.
Oh, I'm excited to talk about it. How many Mai Tais did you get?
I gave it 4 Mai Tais.
Hey, 8.25 Mai Tais. That's not a bad start to the season. And I also wanted to mention the writers for this first episode were Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk. We didn't see them until the end.
Very reserved, Ryan and Brad, I feel like. And I appreciate that.
I think we give them a little golf clap for that.
Yeah.
And then director is John J. Gray, who is American Horror Story veteran, starting back, I think his first episode was Mr. Jingles in the season of 1984. So he's been around for a bit.
Yeah. I liked it. It was good. It's cool. I'm into it.
Here we are. Welcome to
Let's do it.
American Horror Story in New York City. So we are going to go ahead and wrap this episode before we dive into episode 2. So as always, want to say thanks to everybody for listening. Want to, I don't think I'm even, okay. I am going to encourage folks to reach out to us on Facebook and on email at thisamericanhorrorstory@gmail.com or facebook.com/thisamericanhorrorstory. Kris, where can people find you between now and whenever they listen to the next episode?
Right here at my desk. I'll be on Instagram and Twitter at Kris. You said Kris with a K. What about you, Tyler?
I will be on those channels as well, somewhat passively, but I'm there. And I guess we'll now probably be on YouTube at This American Horror Story Podcast. I don't know that we know yet.
We'll see.
We need to make a handle. Maybe we'll see if that's available.
Well, look, check out our Facebook, and we'll let you know. We'll post a link.
Yeah, that's right. All right, everybody. Until next episode, happy hauntings.